Hey everyone, it's Ben here, coming at you with another video. So today is not a life tip, it's not a pro tip, it's not just me lifting weights, but I actually want to get into my personal experience on the drug Accutane, which is used to treat severe acne and how it impacted me as an athlete. Before we get into that, I'm at 66 subs right now. If I could get that to 100, probably by the end of this semester. I'm a sophomore in college at Wesleyan University in Connecticut. I play lacrosse there. If we could get this channel to 100 subs, I would be really hyped. So if you're watching this, I'd appreciate it if you could click the subscribe button down below, as well as like the video. And in the spirit of more plates, more dates, why don't you drop a comment for the algorithm? Why not, right?
The algorithm.
Let me give you a bit of info about the drug Accutane. You might have heard it. There are many names of it. The brand I took was called Clarivis. It is a derivative of vitamin A used to treat severe acne, and it's generally used as a sort of last resort. In my case, I went through high school, kind of going through bouts of acne that was pretty tough at times. It wasn't like, the worst acne you've ever seen, but sometimes my forehead would just get absolutely lit up. I'd be one greasy dude walking through the hall, shiny forehead, all that sort of thing. But nothing crazy. But still, at times, it generally would, be annoying. I mean, if you have to wake up every morning and wonder if you got a new lump on your forehead, it can kind of get at you over time, especially if you're a dorky little high schooler like I was. The last time I touched like actual things besides Accutane or was prescribed them was my senior year of high school. Before my lacrosse season, I was prescribed some antibiotics as well as some more tretinoin cream, which cleared everything up. Around that winter, my acne just really flared up for some reason. Sometimes it can be seasonal. And then, so throughout my lacrosse season, which was the spring, as well as the summer, the antibiotics and tretinoin cream worked pretty well. But unfortunately, what I started to notice is that throughout the summer, particularly as it went on, the inflammation and generally just the acne started coming back. And unfortunately, that's one of the things with antibiotics is that generally they become less effective over time, especially if you keep taking them. Likewise, I don't really want to be on antibiotics, for long periods of time because you're just killing, bacteria within your whole body. And there are lots of good things about bacteria. So I didn't want to be on those. And they were going to, slowly losing effectiveness. So then going into the fall, my thought was like, I'm going to get on Accutane ASAP because what I've heard is that you can take Accutane and, once you're done with your course, the course might be tough. That was kind of my understanding. You might get really dry. But besides that, I thought, if I get a little achy, if my joints hurt or whatever, I'll just get through it. I'll be done with acne. And at least right now, I'm about probably about 8 months out from my last dose. And my acne is nothing like it was before. My face is generally just a lot more clear, and occasionally I'll get a zit or two, but nothing. So in terms of how it actually worked, definite thumbs up. But now getting into my experience, and particularly experience of being an athlete, there were a lot of negatives. I took my first dose somewhere around September. It was a 40 milligram orange pill from Clarivis. And I progressively ramped up my dose. From September, I was at 40, ramped my dose up in December and January. I was at 120. And then for a period of time, I was actually at 4 pills, which is actually, that's where I stayed at, I believe, starting February. So getting into that, and also my course wrapped up, I believe, in March or April, somewhere around there. But I was on it for, I believe, 6 months total. My September, October, November, December, January, February, March. 8 months. I was on it for 8 months total. All right, so my actual experience and how I alluded to before, how it negatively affected me as an athlete. I had a great fall for lacrosse. Lacrosse is a spring sport. As a freshman Division III lacrosse player stepping up to the college game, I played fantastic and I was really happy. Likewise, I want to be the best player I can be, and to be completely honest, at the level I'm playing, I want to be the best player in Division III defensively, and so I wanted to go in there and dominate. And from my perspective, and as a lot of people said, I did. I had a great fall on 40 milligrams, 80 milligrams, and even I think once I was on 120 for a bit, my play was great. I didn't really notice anything on the field, although towards the end of the fall, perhaps when I started taking 120, so maybe like November or the beginning of December, I do recall that I was getting a tiny bit of hip pain, especially if I tried to squat after the lacrosse practice. And generally, I would say I recall the training cycle I was doing as my peak being kind of lackluster. And what I was doing is using one I had used in the past. So it wasn't exactly tailored to the current training scenario I was in. So it wasn't exactly tailored to that. I was just using it because it had a decent progression with the percentages. So I would peak kind of towards the end of the semester. And as I said, although it wasn't the best in terms of, the most optimal for me at the time, I would say that given I followed that and, worked pretty hard and everything, I would have assumed that especially my squat in particular would have felt a lot better, and I would have hit probably some better numbers towards the end of the fall. Before that peak, I actually did set some squat PRs, notably in the beginning of the fall, I squatted 405 for 6, and then at the end of the fall, I did it for 8 reps. So that's important to keep in mind. But yeah, so my peak wasn't that great. And then moving into my training in the winter, so what I did then, and I'll probably do a program review on this sometime, was called the Bulgarian method. The true Bulgarian method, as a natural athlete, you can't really do that because it's basically maxing out multiple times a day. But when people say Bulgarian method, what it generally means for most people is that you're just doing a lift or two at a time. You basically work up to a heavy single, those every day, and that's that. And it's just high volume, low intensity, I want to say. Actually, it might be technically low volume, high frequency, high intensity, because you're working up to like a heavy single every day. So I did that throughout the winter. Looking back with everything I know now about triphasic training and just sports performance stuff, I definitely wouldn't have done that in hindsight. And to be honest, I don't think it's the best program to do. But like I said, perhaps I'll talk about that more in the future. But my experience on that was that I would say, again, my gains were some sort of, some kind of lackluster. I was incredibly consistent. I, worked hard. But I wouldn't say my squat necessarily got any better. Although I would say, at the very least, it kind of stagnated. I just kind of maintain doing that sort of program. But I have a hunch now that if I did that program now, for whatever reason, I bet I actually would be making gains. And it's my thought that the Accutane at that time, at the dose of 120 milligrams, was sort of impeding my progress. Moving on. So I didn't just lift. I also, did a lot of ladder work and, played a bit, ran around, that sort of thing. A lot of jump roping. But I recall towards the end of my winter break that we were assigned the speed and conditioning program. And I remember that doing this program in conjunction with the training I was doing was very difficult. I don't want to say very difficult, but it wasn't easy. I would say, looking back now, at least where my recovery capacity is now, I would think that I'd be able to do that, the squat every day type thing, and the conditioning program, no problem. But at the time, my joints were starting to hurt, and I was like, maybe I should incorporate some more stretching and mobility work, and that's all fine and dandy. But again, I think that if I did that now, I'd just be like, this is easy work. I'm going to get it done. And I, maybe a little bit of stretching and all that sort of stuff. But I wouldn't have really been kind of hitting a bit of a wall recovery-wise as I was then. So I was doing the required conditioning, a little bit of like speed, change of direction work as well. And likewise with the squat every day too, I noticed that it took a long time for me to feel good, in that I might have done like 3, 4, 5 warm-up sets before my joints even started feeling like remotely okay. Like I remember the first set of squats I did with the bar was often the most painful, just in my hips and my knees and everything. It was just, I didn't feel loose and limber. And I mean, me now, it's normal to go in there and feel a bit tight. But I think this is at the time where I really started picking up and be like, this Accutane is making my joints sore. So, but yeah, just dealt with it. Getting now actually on campus, which was towards the end of January, I maxed my lifts from this training cycle of squat every day, bench every day. My bench slowly increased throughout my period on that program, but I remember maxing my lifts or my squat in particular. I squatted at the end of the summer in 2019. I squatted 470, and that was after doing jiu-jitsu and a bunch of stuff. I was super active that summer. So then fast forward to my max in January 2020, I tried to squat 475. I wouldn't say it was optimal conditions, but I failed it. And looking back, again, I think if I didn't take Accutane, I would have done better than that. So, and yeah, around then was where I kind of started picking up like, yo, this Accutane, my joints ain't feeling right. I'm just not as strong and kind of explosive as I was before. But I was like, I'll get through it. I'm a beast. So I moved on started practicing with the team. And this is where I really noticed, at least athletically, that my performance was subpar compared to where it was before. And that was when I noted that when we were playing lacrosse, I just didn't feel as explosive and as powerful. And I recall, still kind of standing out, but I wasn't exactly where I was in the fall, to be quite honest. I mean, in the fall, sometimes when I played, I'd surprise myself, but it seemed like in practicing with the team, scrimmaging and such, I just really wasn't dominating as much, and I just didn't feel that extra oomph. And I noticed something, like also doing conditioning work, that, I'd run really hard, but I just couldn't run as fast. And I talked about, kind of a sort of wall of recovery capacity. I couldn't recover as much, and there just wasn't that extra oomph when I was moving around, lifting weights, playing lacrosse. So when things really started to go south was when I actually started doing, not only practicing and trying to lift weights and get stronger, was also when we started incorporating speed work, which was a 2 time a week. It was like 2 sessions at 7 in the morning, back to back. So for most college dudes, that's going to mean 2 nights of sleeping like doo-doo and probably not much at all, or at least that was me. But 2 mornings where you get up, do this conditioning, and then you get up the next day. I can harp about how I don't think that's very optimal, but we did it. And really here is where I noticed that I was not performing well at all. I was slow. And, for the first time in my life, I was like, maybe I've gained too much weight. Around towards the end of the fall, I was about 220. Around here, I was probably a little over 220, probably slowly losing weight, actually. But I hadn't gained much weight at all for me to, feel like, wow, I'm feeling really slow. It's not like I gained 15 pounds over the winter or 20 pounds. So likewise, on top of just feeling kind of slow, and I think other people starting to notice it too, was where I noticed my joints like really hurt, where now is, hurting to get up. Now I feel like I'm so behind recovery-wise that I'm just not an effective athlete anymore. I mentioned things to my coach. He suggested that, probably take a break from training, and I still hadn't ruled that out. Like maybe I just had lifted so much that, the past summer or all the years of lifting and stuff hadn't really taken a break, that now at this point that it's all hitting me at once. But I just kept pressing on. I think at this point I was actually on 4 pills because I just wanted to get this course done. And we started practicing with the team. Still just not good. This was actually kind of a down period in my life because going to a school out east in Connecticut, Wesleyan University, a lot of my confidence was based on the fact that I was really performing well in the field. And at that point, after summer, it was a bit of my identity. Like Manser, he's tough, he's strong, he is a beast on the field. And to see that kind of slip away was tough. Yeah. So probably once I just like every joint in my body hurt, and I'd hobble around on the field to where other people would actually be like, "Why are you running like that?" And when I would do the warm-up lap with my team, and I would literally be in pain just because my calves and my ankles and everything just did not feel right. Around this time is where I'm like, "Yep, it's the Accutane." And this is where I started telling my coaches, my teammates, and where I was really just putting on Accutane because, it was pretty damn clear to me. I think some people weren't exactly convinced. I think in a lot of people's minds, it was just, me too big, lifting too much time in the weight room, that sort of thing. Didn't play at all. I definitely, if you asked me in the fall, I thought I would be starting. But it was what it was. I also lost a lot of weight. I probably lost about 10 pounds from the start of the semester, which is normal. Say if this was, going into the season, like towards the end of the season, if I had lost, 10 plus pounds, I really wouldn't be that surprised because that's normal. But this was about a month in, and likewise, around this time too, so my lifts were down tremendously. And to give you an example, my senior year of high school, so I was 18, probably hovering around 200 pounds or so. I was squatting in season, like after a tough practice, piece of cake, 315 for like 5 triples, pause squats. It wasn't like speed work, but it was like some solid work. Probably took me 15 minutes or so. I enjoyed some music, listened to it, felt great. And all was fine and dandy, right? Got my squats in for the week. Now it's actually going to rest. I did, game or something during the week. But that, piece of cake, pretty much. 315, 5 sets of 3 pause squats. And I can recall my, 215-pound self feeling absolutely terrible, going to a team lift and barely squatting like 315 for 3 grandy reps. That was a hit to my ego, plain and simple. But now moving on from the actual season, because my season was canceled because of COVID, quite unfortunate, but at least from a selfish perspective, if there was a season to lose out on, I guess it would be that one. Moving on from that, I ended my course about a month after I got home, so like I said, maybe April. I even think at times, actually, while I was playing, I even took 5 pills because I was like, you know what, I'll just contain the suck. And I had a glimmer of hope that I would be able to potentially actually start balling out again towards the end of the season if I finished my course in time. I actually planned it 2 weeks before we were going to play Tufts. I was like, I'll get all my pills in. And then, 2 weeks after, maybe I'll start playing well enough that I can actually get on the field to play this damn team that I wanted to play for like a year. Didn't happen. Again, it is what it is. But yeah, so came home, finished my course up, was doing some bodybuilding type work at home because it was COVID, gyms were closed, and that's really all I had access to. Some dumbbells, I did some like 50-pound split squats, Bulgarian split squats or something. That might have actually been after I finished my course. But I just did some bodybuilding work, gained my weight back pretty quickly. But likewise, again, like I said, a lot of hypertrophy stuff. I was doing dumbbell flies. Hadn't done those for months. But yeah, I finished my course. And then for the next few weeks after I finished my course, I was still a bit achy and such. But I'd say probably about a month after my last dose is when I started to feel back to normal. To give an example of, I think, to kind of prove the way the Accutane was impacting me, is that the last squat session I had on Accutane was actually after I came home, and I did 250 pounds for a 5x5 that wasn't easy, and I was at my buddy's house. And to put things in perspective, after probably a month and a half of doing no real heavy lifting other than just kind of high volume leg accessories like RDLs and goblet squats in my basement with, again, not super heavy weight, I squatted with that same buddy about a couple, maybe two months or so after I finished my Accutane course, and I squatted 385 for an easy single. I was just kind of testing at that point, how much strength have I gotten back? So yeah, 385 for an easy single. I probably could have hit low fours, without even training the squat in a long time. But that just goes to show how much the Accutane was impacting me. So this is a long video, but I wanted to conclude it with kind of my thoughts on the whole situation. Do I regret it? No, because the season would have been, kind of pissed away, unfortunately, regardless. And I guess now I don't have acne, which is great. I do have some minor concerns in that towards the end of my cycle, I was also super paranoid because I read about some terrible side effects that have occurred apparently in a small portion of people. For instance, your natural testosterone just being destroyed by the drug or permanently lowered. And of course, me as someone who, for the not near future, but foreseeable future, I want to be natural. I want to, be squatting 500 pounds and I'm 50 years old. That was obviously quite terrifying. So do I regret it? No, assuming, I don't have any long-term side effects that are going to occur in 5-10 years, that can be somehow connected to the drug. No, it is what it is. I'm stronger than I've ever been before, and I feel great physically. I do want to say, though, that I think a lot of the issues that I dealt with could have been mitigated if I just stayed at a more reasonable dose. Instead of having the mentality of, I want to get this sucker done as fast as I can, if I just stayed on 40 to 80 milligrams and did that for, probably about a year, I don't think I would have had any real impact to my athletic performance. And effectively, I still would have been cured even doing a less aggressive dose every day. So yeah, like I said, even though things panned out the way they did, I am stronger than I've ever been. Although I'm, like I said, perhaps a tiny bit paranoid that it may have affected me in some way that I don't exactly understand yet, like perhaps hormonally. And likewise, and I don't say this maliciously at all, but I am more motivated than ever, particularly because I think there were some people that perhaps wrote me off, and understandably, I sucked for a period of time. I sucked. I was hardly an athlete at all. But I want to prove them wrong. I want to walk in there and, look like I just came out of prison and all I could do was lift weights and eat and sleep for a year. And I'm quite confident I'm going to make that happen. And like I said, I feel great. I feel powerful. And I'm looking forward to hopefully kicking some butt this spring and actually stepping on the field. So yeah, guys, that's my experience with Accutane. If you have any questions, particularly if you're an athlete or something, I would be happy to help, or just any questions regarding my experience with the drug. Some side effects I didn't talk about. Dryness is a big one, nosebleeds, all that sorts of stuff. That's just kind of things you have to deal with. But for me, it really wouldn't have mattered. I was just going to get through it. But it's important to note. And finally, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, please like, subscribe, hit the button down below. I want to grow this channel to 100 subs by the end of this school year. And if you guys could make me happen, I'd really appreciate it. So have a great day, whatever you're doing. Get after it. If you lift weights, have a great workout. If you don't lift weights, you probably should start lifting weights. That's awesome. And thank you very much for watching.